Welcome to our joint STM and Research for Life webinar. I'm Sarah Phibbs, Director for Research for Life Publisher Partnerships at STM, and I'm delighted so many of you are joining us today. So I chose the chameleon when we were working on the Research for Life strategic plan to represent the change that I think is taking place within Research for Life. So Research for Life's discovery portal that you all probably know very well serves as a critical infrastructure and a catalyst for sustainable development, fulfilling Goal 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals, the Partnership for the Goals. And in 2019, the UN upgraded the status of access to information as an SDG indicator. But I think we all know the SDGs are challenging us to urgently impact social change. And so our goal really is to go beyond access to achieve an environment that can enable lower income country researchers to address societal challenges. And that really means all those challenges that are set out in the Sustainable Development Goals. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about our format for this session. So we've got 4 10-minute talks, and they're kind of rapid fire. So there's no time for Q&A within the meeting, but what we're going to do is ask people to put their Q&A in the Q&A button. And then the team or the speaker, after they've spoken, will be able to answer any questions. So please do put your questions up there and we'll attempt to answer them. Then after that, we've got a 30-minute breakout, and you can choose which direction you take your adventure today. So you can start in collection gap analysis, research skills for capacity development, research integrity training, or equity in editor and board roles. And we have members of various different of our committees at Research for Life running the breakout groups. So if everybody can keep on mute, because we're in a meeting rather than a webinar, that would really help. So thank you for that. And now I'm going to hand over to Gratian. Gratian is our chair of the Research for Life Executive Council. He's also Executive Director at ITOCA. Over to you, Gratian.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. So I will speak on the bigger picture as far as the strategic plan is concerned, and really honing on the theory of change that we have developed. Our vision really of the strategic plan is for Vision 2030. And that is to transform from a one-way donation to reciprocal engagement to enable diverse and rich scholarly exchange. We also are looking at significantly increasing the participation of researchers from MLICs in the global research community to support local networks as far as capacity development is concerned. I've got there on the board quite a busy schedule, but what I'll do is I'll break it down into pieces so that it's easy for you to consume the information that is there. Sorry, I missed you there. As far as the theory of change is concerned, we are focusing really on the inclusivity, the diversity and equity as far as scholarly communication is concerned. And that will enable the lower income researchers to address societal changes. This, we can be able to achieve it through the impact as far as lower income countries are concerned, and making sure that the participants are active in research communications and publications as far as peer-reviewed journals are concerned, and also taking advantage of open access and making sure that we are represented in the editorial roles, the editorial boards, the reviews, and those that participate in the research communication to make sure that it actually comes out. We want to make sure that we level the playing field. We have made several assumptions to be able to get to this. As far as research equity is concerned, we are looking at improving the quality of what is coming out through collaborations that we have, and making sure that, again, there's inclusivity in that and the voices are all heard to enable us to ensure that the depth and quality of those interactions keep on improving. We also are looking at making sure that the access by researchers is through authorized content, and ensuring that those coming from the lower income countries are coming through the right channels to access this information. We have also made the assumption that the access to research is indeed a catalyst as far as development is concerned, that will lead to production and informing the practice and also the research that goes around that. More importantly, we think that the disparities in the different countries, in the lower income countries, can be addressed by ensuring that we come up with approaches and strategies that are locally binding and have got a better approach as far as the researchers are concerned in those countries. Open access itself, we can see that as far as it is concerned, the transformation to open access really is the emphasis as far as authorship equity is concerned for the low-income countries. The partners that are publishing, we can see that they have got the opportunity to really influence significantly as far as the diversity to editorial teams are concerned in the boards, in the review teams, and to those who are actually working in the production of these publications. And of course, more importantly, and underlying all this work, we think that the donors and the partners that are involved already in Research4Life will continue to help us with addressing the challenges that we are facing in the low to low income countries. And how do we ensure that we can get to that as far as the impact is concerned? There are three core strengths that we have, and we really want to emphasize on that. The first one being, of course, the strong partnership that we have. We've got on board the publishers, we've got the UN agencies, and we've got the technical partners, and also more importantly, the users themselves that are coming from diverse backgrounds and are bringing in on the table diverse issues and different kind of strengths that they are working on. We also have, of course, the platform itself that we've developed over the years, and we've continued to tweak on it to make sure that it meets the users' needs. In the last year, we had a major tweak as far as that is concerned in terms of the technology itself, in terms of authentication and how it accesses the resources that are available on that. But we also, over the years, have added the focused kind of training materials that really address the needs and ensure that the users know how to access these resources. The third area of our strength is the fundraising vehicle that we've put in place, and that is the Friends of Research4Life. They started this work now, it's been over a year, and we are sure that we will be able to get the benefits of actually putting that vehicle together. I will move on to the next aspect now, and that is the area where we think we can focus on bringing that change. How do we get that change really accelerated? Some of it has already come on board, but we think that there is opportunities for to accelerate those aspects. The user experience itself, we want to make sure that we can improve that and reduce on aspects like the exclusions issues and also the breadth of the actual content that we have as far as the books and journals and databases are concerned, and also the offerings of the languages. The clarity that we need as far as access to open access publication and ensuring that there are the waivers that they can be taken advantage of by the users when they've learned how to use and work with the kind of set of waivers that they have. Do they really go across the board? That's one thing that we're encouraging our partners to look at. As far as training is concerned, we have got quite a variety, and we really are addressing the full research communication cycle, ensuring that you are not only accessing what is available, but also you are building on that innovation and contributing to what you are working on as far as your specialization is concerned. We have got on board also the Country Connectors initiative that is now working in several countries, and those numbers of those countries are ramping up as we go. We think that with the community building that we have between the global south and the global north, that exchange that we're trying to achieve can actually be improved on if we can continue on this trajectory that we have. I will talk on those outcomes that we are looking at. How do we know that we have arrived where we want to get to if we can't measure it? So it's important that we measure that. Those 3 points that I have on the board right now really speaks to that. The increased engagement as far as usage is concerned, and also ensuring that the researchers from the low-income countries are participating actively in the research conversation. We also have looked at the issue of growth in terms of the publications and productions that are actually coming from the global south, and taking advantage of open access and the other options that are also available, and making sure that we really drill down to issues of case studies to understand what are the requirements on the ground so that we can build on that. Once we get to really seeing the raising of profile of the work that is coming out from the global south, then we can see how far we go as far as reaching our targets is concerned. The last row there really talks about the benefits of the work that we are doing and how we can then measure to make sure that we are getting where we want to get to. When we see the high quality of research access actually coming out and building on what is available in terms of the capacity that we have in the lower income countries and the researchers doing themselves. The exchange between the south to the north, north to south, those collaborations ongoing, be it on research itself or the publications coming out of this in terms of production, those then confirm that we are really impacting on what we are doing. The donors, the partners working together in a way that really brings in the synergies of the work that they are doing. And we're now developing an open scholarship ecosystem across the board that will benefit the global south and the global north together, working in collaborations. That kind of work will really accelerate our work towards achieving, as far as we are concerned, the theory of change and being able to achieve the inclusivity, the diversity, the equity, as far as accessing scholarly communication is concerned. And we can build that in order to be able to address the challenges, both at local level and internationally. That's what we hope to achieve as far as Research4Life strategic plan is concerned. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'll bring it back to you.
Thank you, Gratian. Fantastic. So please do put your questions in the Q&A and we'll try to answer them. But I'm going to move swiftly on to introduce you to Kimberly Parker. So Kimberly is the program manager at the World Health Organization. She is pretty much our institutional memory, I think, for the Research4Life partnership, and she heads operations at Research4Life, and I'm sure many of you have come in contact with her, helping sort out problems, issues, whatever is needed. So I'll hand over to Kimberly now.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Gratian. My part of this is to talk to you about the strategic objectives that we have just put together in our current strategic plan, which happens to be the fourth one in our 22 years of existence, and is definitely what lies underneath and lies on top of the theory of change that Gratian was talking to you about. This particular strategic objective gives us direction until 2030, which is a nice long way away, and we probably will need all of that time because we've been rather ambitious. In this strategic plan, we have 3 overarching objectives and then 7 goals within those overarching objectives, and then within each goal, some specific implementation aims. So I'm going to mostly talk about the intermediary layer, that's the 7 goals. And there are some details of the implementation aims that I will tease out because those come into play later in what we're going to be talking to you and working with you about later this afternoon or today, depending on where you are in the world. So let's look at that first goal, which is increase usage of content and services. Unsurprisingly, we have had similar goals in each of our prior strategic plans. This is kind of the core of what Research4Life has always done. We want the content to be used. We want the users to have the best experience possible. However, if you look at that final implementation aim, it takes our earlier efforts at user outreach and engagement and shifts the focus to collaboration. And this is a theme you're going to hear over and over from us. For the second goal, the create a seamless user journey, it's also a goal that we have repeated for every strategic plan, with again the shifting focus mentioning user control of our platform via personalization. So you can see again that theme is coming out where we are wanting the users to be in charge of what's going on. For the next goal, which is under our second objective, we have developed new services to increase lower income country research output. This is something that we've been expanding over the years, particularly in the last couple of years. Ironically, it was a goal in our very first strategic plan. We wanted to do more. We wanted to go beyond access to information. But that faded in priority since then because we had a lot on our plate to cover. It is encouraging now to feel that we are willing to stretch ourselves again and come back to this question of going beyond the access and getting into the question of the entire scholarly communication cycle and equity therein. Our content-related goal is provide content that that researchers need across all 17 SDGs. You are going to hear later today how we are identifying gaps in our collections related to this goal, which, by the way, has been present in all but one of our strategic plans, but it has evolved from emphasis on very focused subject content to now the broad, comprehensive statement that we aspire to. And thirdly, I can get my notes to go to thirdly. Finally, we come to some new territory. The first goal on this page, the equitable participation and representation throughout the governance structure. We had prior goals in this area, but they were focused only on governance and not user creation, representation, or control. This represents a major pivot for Research4Life into the equity and inclusion area, and one that we very much want to be successful with. The next goal is ensure efficient and professionalized running of Research4Life, which was mentioned in prior strategic plans, but only as background information on operations and never had a goal in its own right before. This reflects the maturity of our organization and the growth and scale of what it means to keep our services running properly for the user community. And then we come to our last goal, which is evolve new funding streams and strengthen existing ones to create a modern fit-for-purpose organization. We had a goal on funding in our last strategic plan, but not before that, which reflects again the growth in scale and our high aims as we embrace the new opportunities we face to accomplish our ambitious agenda. And with that, very nice segue, I will turn it over to Sarah and we move forward to funding.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Kimberly. Please put your questions in Q&A and I'll kick off by just introducing you to Daniel Dollar. So Daniel is the co-chair of our fundraising committee, but in his real job, he is an associate university librarian at Yale. So over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And I'm really pleased to be able to present this update on behalf of the fundraising committee and my co-chair, Michael Olam. So as you've already heard from Gratian and Kimberly, we've been talking about the theory, Research4Life's theory of change and our strategic directions. And when you look at Research4Life, it's actually a very strong partnership, a very substantial NGO. When we think about the in-kind donations and the donated content and in-kind contributions from the partnership, it adds up into the tens of millions of dollars. And maybe 50, 75 million, we're still working that out. But the actual budget is minuscule, just a few $100,000. And that budget is based on primarily Group B fee contributions from institutions who can afford to contribute the $1,500. So it's a very precarious environment to sort of build a budget, and the COVID pandemic and all the disruptions, the war in the Ukraine have just demonstrated how precarious a global economic situation is, and that also impacts our Group B funding. And so when we bring that all together and think about what we're trying to achieve as a partnership and trying to advance through our theory of change and our strategic directions, we know that we need a much stronger financial base of operation if we're going to actually reach the goal that we've set for ourselves for 2030. So with that, we have, as was noted in the theory of change that Gratian talked about as one of our core strengths, we established a US-based 501c3 Friends of Research4Life, which has been up and running over the past 2 years with an independent governance structure and board of directors. We have been working to develop a fundraising strategy with specific fundraising proposals that have been developed through deep conversation and work with various committees and groups within Research4Life. Those include a user drop-off analysis study, which has been funded or was funded by Hindawi, marketing and communications proposal, one around training capacity development, technology, where we're starting with a discovery phase to sort of set the foundation for what we really need to sort of build out that effective technology platform, again, that Gratian was talking about. And then finally, the Country Connector program, which has partially funded by the Elsevier Foundation, which is really putting people in place within Research4Life countries to advance the work of the partnership and to really help bring into being that global research exchange and collaboration that is two-way and that really is building scholarship and is not, one directional donation. And then we've also been developing around these proposals, a toolkit, sort of tools and resources to support our fundraising work. And we've had some success. To date, we have raised just over $556,000 with additional funding that's been committed. And that money has been going to various projects as listed here: the Country Connector program, the content portal system, the user drop-off study, and training sessions. We've also been funding fundraising consultancies with Shushanta Gupta and Nancy Bremhall, because we realized that we need fundraising expertise, not something that Michael and I and members of the committee are just sort of doing in our spare time. We need people who really understand the world of fundraising and can really work with us and support us in this effort. I realize, I think that I skipped over a slide, so I'm just going to back up for a second and just talk about some of the actions that we've taken. So we have been doing fundraising appeal. We've done a couple of appeals in May and then in December this past year. We've set up a membership program that several publishers have joined, publisher partners, and we are hopeful that more will join. For those who are STM members, there's a very easy way that Sarah Phibbs and the association have set up for members of that association to pay a membership fee for Research4Life. And we're developing infrastructure again with Nancy and Shushanta to be able to support our ongoing fundraising efforts. And we know that our ambition and what we need to achieve is beyond just the funding resources of the partnership. And so we are in the early stages of beginning to reach out to organizations beyond the partnership, philanthropic organizations, donor groups, in order to begin to make approaches to them about what we are doing and how they may, how their work may align with ours in terms of funding our efforts. And to come back to this slide again, yes, we've had some initial success, but there is so much more that needs to be done. I mean, these sums of money are wonderful to see, but they are really insufficient. We need much more funding, just to be really blunt about it. And we need you. We really need you and your involvement in this. And that can come in many different ways, serving as champions within your organizations for funding Research4Life, serving as contacts, or maybe providing us introductions for conversations with donor organizations. If you're in a position to consider a membership, if your organization has not done so already. And again, really want to thank the generosity shown to date, but really look forward with everyone on this call and beyond as we think about and take next steps in building out a financial base that will allow us to reach for the goals that we've set for the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. That was great. And there will be a bit later, I'll perhaps suggest some ways you can get involved. So I'm going to hand over now to Jaron. So Jaron is co-founder of Havos AI and also a board member of Friends of Research4Life. And she's going to talk to you about a project Kimberly referred to earlier on about how we identify content gaps in the Research4Life portfolio. Over to you, Jaron.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And Sarah, I'm just noticing I don't have control of the slides.
Okay, don't worry. I'll move you on.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you so much. So good morning, good afternoon to everyone. And so I'd like to talk to you about this ambitious project that I'm collaborating on with, with the entire Research4Life team, but in particular, the content strategy team. And I'd like to just give, a huge shout out and thanks to that team, and especially Mary Oakes and Susana Cardoza for their leadership and collaboration on this exercise over the past year. So what we're doing in this exercise is we're trying to explore a content gap analysis with regards to the Research4Life journals content and the SDG indicators. And Sarah briefly mentioned, the alignment now of thinking about how Research4Life can contribute back to the important global goals that, that are the Sustainable Development Goals. And the way that we're approaching this evidence gap analysis is to really focus in on sort of 3 key questions. So first, what are the major areas of focus in the Sustainable Development Goals, which are 17 goals and a number of sub-indicator goals, that are not adequately covered in the materials included in the Research4Life's program collections? And so this question really breaks down into a content analysis to explore where among particularly the journal content do we have areas of significant coverage versus where do we have, relative gaps. The second question that we're aiming to answer in this gap analysis is which publishers that are, currently outside of the Research4Life community have material that we could consider relevant, but do not yet participate in Research4Life. So we're really looking at this as also an outreach strategy in terms of how can we identify new Research4Life content. And I'm so sorry, but I think there's some. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Great. So then the third and final question that we're answering in this content gap analysis is, the inverse of that question to identify publishers who are not contributing to Research4Life, but that's to identify where is their existing content from publishers who already contribute to Research4Life, but maybe have additional content that could enhance the research support for the SDGs. And given, the volume of content that's made available through Research4Life from participating publishers, as well as the complexity of those 3 questions that I just went through, we thought it was really important to bring in innovative technologies to explore this work. And so within my role at Havos AI, as well as I hold a research role at the University of Notre Dame, we wanted to explore how to use AI to answer this question. And Havos AI has designed a number of AI models and data science workflows that are designed to work with unstructured data, right? And particularly text-based data. So this approach tends to work very well for content analysis and in particular gap analysis, where each SDG has its own sub-indicator, and you'll see that in just a moment, but we want to map that back to the scientific content. So I won't go over sort of the technical details of the AI models today, but I'm always happy to discuss that if anyone is interested in knowing more about that. Great, next slide, please. Great, so, with that outline in mind, what we did was begin with Sustainable Development Goal number 2, which is the goal to end hunger here on Earth by 2030. We began with that as a proof of concept to see how we would design this methodology and what the results would actually be. Would we actually learn anything from this process? So we began with a data set of 10,500 journals across the Research4Life journals, primarily, I would say, within the collections in Agora and Hanari, and mapped those to SDG 2. And our data set right now is about 10,500 journals. The parameters that we're using within that data set are primarily aims and scopes at this point. So we haven't done exhaustive content analysis to look at each individual article, although that is in the scope of work for us in a phase 2 of this project. But what this has allowed us to do is figure out how would we take this methodology and adapt it to be able to cover the other remaining 16 SDGs. So at this point, our pilot gives us a working proof of concept for SDG 2 that does allow us to adapt this for the remaining SDGs. Next slide, please. Great, and so here's some of the early results that we want to be able to share with you. And let me just talk you through these in a little bit more detail. So what you see here within each cluster of bar graphs are the individual sub-indicators within SDG 2. So I mentioned that earlier. Every SDG has a number of subcomponents, and each of those subcomponents are really measuring something quite specific within this, under their broader category. So for hunger, some of the most important elements to consider are whether or not a person and their family has access to food. So what's the access that they have? How are they able to, what are the opportunities for both income generation as well as productivity of the plants, of the crops? What are the nutritional elements? And nutrition, you'll note here, it's a mapping that's ongoing, because nutrition is primarily measured by caloric intake. SDG 2.4 there is really looking at improved environment. What's the environmental sustainability? And SDG 2.5 is looking at biodiversity. So you can see how these sub-indicators, really help us map in a little bit more granular detail, something that adds up to a bigger picture. And what the bar chart is telling us here is kind of relative overall content that is mapped to each particular SDG. So let me say that again. Basically, what we're able to identify is where there's a relationship that's identified and where a relationship is not identified within the data set. And so we can see, for instance, for SDG 2.4, and I'm not sure if the slide, oh, thank you, Sarah. SDG 2.4, for instance, there is some relationship that we can identify between journal aims and scopes, but the vast majority of content, we really don't have a relationship identified. And so this helps us understand, is this an overall gap that truly exists within the community and therefore would need to be filled with new content, new journals, new books, other types of things that don't currently exist? Or for us, the question is, does this content still exist somewhere? And we need to bring that into the Research4Life community from publishers who are not currently working with us. So just some ways to interpret the results here. So in terms of next steps, where we hope to go after this, so we will be scaling up and we're looking for ambitious partners and additional resources to be able to do this mapping more exhaustively across all of the SDGs. Havos AI is currently contributed in-kind funding to do the scope of work for SDG 2. So we are looking for both partners and resources to carry this work forward. You can see here a very small snippet of a dashboard, and what this dashboard is making available and is representing is that it allows us to, number one, deliver a more granular insight on how content breaks down across publishers, across the Research4Life programs, and across SDGs. So we do have tracking mechanisms that we're trying to put in place to allow for more granular, exploration of the content. Finally, the last point I'll end on here is that this type of project where we're really looking at mapping the SDGs at such a scale across the entire scientific and research communities allows, I think, hopefully, I want to emphasize all of us to have advocacy opportunities to demonstrate and track progress across the SDG commitments. So as we come up to 2030, one of the key things that every government and organization who is working on the SDGs is looking for is what's the progress that's been made. And we think that this is another opportunity to work with the scientific community and demonstrate that progress. So I'm happy to end there, Sarah, and give the controls back to you. Thanks very much.
Super, thanks, Jaron. I think everybody's been very shy today and we haven't had any questions, but please do post any questions that occur to you as we go along. So we're now going to move on to our breakout groups. So our breakouts are numbered 1 to 4. So we have collection gaps, number 1, research training resources, number 2, research integrity training, number 3, and the equity challenge at number 4. And you can choose which group to join, and we'll end up with reasonably even groups. It is a bit of an experiment to see how our gang of individuals kind of vote to go into these different groups. But we're going to have 30 minutes in the breakout group, and each breakout group has 2 leaders, one who will introduce the topic and the other who will take some notes. And then at the end of 30 minutes together, we'll come back together and share the top idea or the kind of trend or the thing that most occurred as a kind of light bulb moment to people in their groups. And we'll share those ideas together. And then afterwards, we'll find a way of sharing with everybody the actual output from each group.